this is not what I expected from American president, because, if you're president of the greatest country, you should have dignity. You should treat other leaders with respect, even when you disagree with that. But at the same time, I remain hopeful. We will manage. We shouldn't forget, we're closest allies, Ukraine and the United States. We are sort of doomed to be together, to fight together, to win together, to defeat Russia together. And this is truly important.
President Zelensky said that his troubles with the Trump administration will pass. He said he would definitely want to work with America to bring peace. But Donald Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, and the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, are both suggesting that Zelensky might have to leave office to get a deal with Russia. Could a new Ukrainian leader really be a way out of the current stalemate in the war? There's no elections, though, so it's not clear how a new leader could be created. Oleksandr Merezhko is an MP for President Zelensky's Servant of the People Party and chairs the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Ukrainian Parliament. Oleksandr, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What do you think of this? Might Zelensky have to go in order for a deal to be done with America?
Well, first of all, if these people are truly Democrats, they should remember that it's not up to foreign countries to dictate Ukrainian people who will be their president. President Zelensky was elected in democratic elections. He stays our president, commander-in-chief. Elections under our constitution and legislation can be held only after lifting martial law. It's impossible legally to hold them now. And, Ukraine doesn't dictate the United States who should be the president. We're not doing this. So there is principle, I'm international law, and there is principle of sovereign equality. Let's abide by this principle, because these statements are just shocking. And in Ukraine, they lead only to boosting the popularity of President Zelensky, who is our leader and who is symbol of our resistance.
Do you think the problem here is, and I think Zelensky implied this in something he said, Oleksandr, which was ultimately Trump doesn't regard him as an equal. And the way he was treated in that meeting suggests that Trump and Vance don't regard him as an equal. And that could be a problem for Ukraine, because they need to regard him as a serious player in order to do a deal.
Well, it's hard to say whether or not they regard our president as an equal. They should be. They should be. They should take into consideration that Mr. Zelensky, our president, is a president at war, and he's a courageous person, and he has proved many times his courage. So it should be respected. And, after all, if you are a host, there are certain laws of hospitality, and if we're living in civilized society. And I believe that it's not only about Zelensky. Zelensky represents the whole nation, all Ukrainians. And it doesn't matter how you can perceive Zelensky personally, but you should respect the nation, especially the nation fighting bravely for its survival.
How did you feel when you saw the way he was treated, out of interest?
Honestly, I was shocked. I didn't expect anything like that to happen. I know from the theory of communication that to be a good communicator, you need to understand that communication takes place at different levels. And sometimes it's about emotional level. When you talk to a person, you understand that this person needs emotional support also. And this is not what I expected from American president, because, if you're president of the greatest country, you should have dignity. You should treat other leaders with respect, even when you disagree with that. But at the same time, I remain hopeful. We will manage. We shouldn't forget, we're closest allies, Ukraine and the United States. We are sort of doomed to be together, to fight together, to win together, to defeat Russia together. And this is truly important. And we should just, let bygones be bygones and to move forward together.
Do you think you need a US backstop to any security deal? We were just been talking to a UK minister who wouldn't say, but really the strong implication was you need the US supporting you, otherwise there's no real other answer.
Yes, definitely we need US support, but we have been waging war against Russia for 11 years without American support. When we recall the first month of this full-scale invasion, when Russian troops were defeated near Kyiv and near Kharkiv later, it was practically with very little support. And we are capable to continue, but it's in terms of costs of lives of our soldiers, of our civilians, it might be a problem. Yes, we need to have American support.
One of our listeners just got a question for you just before you go, Oleksandr. It's an interesting one that, this is a mineral deal that you are doing with America. Couldn't you offer to do that deal with someone else? Couldn't you offer to do that deal with Europe for similar security guarantees? Because Trump feels he's the only buyer in town. He feels he's the most powerful person. Couldn't you say, we've got all these minerals, we'll do a deal with Europe on the minerals in exchange for security?
Why not? I'm in favor of this. I would consider this opportunity because, yes, Ukraine is very rich in minerals, but, sometimes the picture I see looks a little bit strange when a new sheriff is in town and when a person comes and asks to protect, to give security against a gangster, and this sheriff is saying, I should first talk to this gangster and before I do something, give me half of your possessions. What kind of sheriff is that? What kind of deputy sheriff who is supporting this kind of behavior? It looks a little bit strange.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Well, I'm glad it's suggested by our listeners. It's worth thinking about for everyone this morning. Oleksandr, good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us. Let's speak to Yevgenia Kravchuk. She's a Ukrainian MP who joins us this morning from Kyiv. Yevgenia, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you feeling?
Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure. How are you feeling today after all that's happened over the last couple of days?
I will say much better after the coalition of the willing met in London, because I think Europe does need to wake up. And there was a wake-up call in Munich Security Conference. I don't know if you followed that. Yeah. I was there. I listened to Jade Vance. And basically, I saw the reaction of the Europeans at first shock, and then we need to do something. Well, we need to do something cannot stay just in good statements and reassuring that Europe respects values and understands who is the aggressor. So basically, why this coalition is formed not on the form of the EU, it's because Great Britain plays a huge role in security of European continent, but also you might saw the Norwegian Prime Minister. He's not, this country is not in EU, but also Turkey, and the Foreign Minister of Turkey. Well, about what happened in the Oval Cabinet. Well, I honestly think that Zelensky stood up for dignity, and we might be a much smaller nation than Russia or United States, but we cannot be deprived of dignity. We had two revolutions that were about dignity. This war is about dignity and the freedom of choice and the right to be a sovereign nation.
Do you think he failed, though, Zelensky? Because I take the point, and many British people watching would agree with you that they thought he was very dignified. But he had one job, and the job was to get through that meeting and get a deal for Ukraine. And he didn't manage to do it. And you can blame Trump and Vance for that, but that was his job. That was his job as a representative of the Ukrainian people, was to get something done with the US, and he didn't manage to do it.
Well, the reason why it happened as it happened, because Ukraine cannot have just something, some sort of a deal, because we did have a ceasefire in 2015. Remember, it was the Minsk agreement. It was actually a format without United States. So that's why we do strongly believe that United States has to be, in this composition to have a long-lasting peace, because the last time it didn't work out without them. So basically, we do not want the repetition of just the ceasefire, and then Russia will use this break just to build up, to produce more tanks, to mobilize more people, and then come back. And our country will be in weaker position because, we will have to do the demobilization. Obviously, it will be less morale after, unjust deal. And then, Russia will be getting even more Ukrainian territories, will be consuming all the resources because they want the Ukrainian resources as well, human resources. And then with all of this, even bigger army, bigger amount of resources will strike further into other countries.
But the point is, Yevgenia, you need the US, is what you're saying. And at the moment, the US and Zelensky do not get on. That's the problem that Ukraine now has. Everything you're saying says you need the US. US. And at the minute, the US is saying, we feel offended, or at least the president of the US is saying, we feel offended by Zelensky. We can't really do a deal with him.
Well, first of all, if you look on the polls, and I still believe that Trump administration is looking on the polls, American people might be, supporting at least the party that voted for Republicans might be supporting this America first, but at the same time they don't want to be allies with Putin, with Russia. And that's the point. Actually, the aid that Ukraine got from United States was voted by bipartisan support in the Congress. It wasn't the sole decision of Biden. So basically, it's already the support of the people. And actually, I was a foreign exchange student in myself in the United States. I lived in Maryland. I still have host family there. And I got a lot of support from American people. Yes, it might be tough point in the personal communication with President Trump, but I believe that it can be, it can be fixed.
You think it can? He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to stand down then, because there's an argument that he should, for the greater good of the country, he should step aside because a deal with America is more important than the political future of Zelensky. Do you think he might need to consider that?
We have to understand what is still with America. If it's just about the minerals, it's now about the investment fund and work together on the resources and the minerals. So it's better than we started off 2 weeks ago. President Zelensky is ready to sign this. But let's answer. Do we have a question? Do we have an answer from the American president? What are concessions from the Russian side? Yeah. Because right now, the Putin, Lavrov is sticking to the position that they put into the constitution the Ukrainian regions in administrative borders, meaning that Ukrainian army has to step down and actually leave the non-occupied cities. So the regional centers, the Kherson that was liberated in 2022, Zaporizhia that was never under occupation. And we would like, as Ukrainians, of course, to hear what is the position of America on this. Yeah. How they see it before talking about any deals as a whole, because I don't see the peace plan for the long-lasting peace right now on the table. It has to be formed yet.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Yevgenia, good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's Yevgenia Kravchuk. That's an excellent point, Kate, right at the end there, which is we never talk about what Putin is going to concede here, do we? We basically, the position seems to be Ukraine will have to give up something. The US will get a mineral deal. Europe will have to come to Ukraine's aid. But the silent bit is, and Putin will just keep whatever he's got and doesn't have to do anything. Is that you don't often hear what Putin will have to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's often a conversation about territory, and whenever you get into talking to people about what territory will go where, that conversation is always shut down publicly. Those are for Ukraine to set the terms. The UK side often says it's not a conversation we want to have publicly. But it's very clear that Crimea is not going to be handed back to Ukraine. Where the line will be drawn is a sort of much bigger question. And even if we're just talking about territory, what is the incentive here for Russia to seek an end to the war? I mean, you can talk about the economics, you can talk about their military being degraded, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they do seem to be getting what they potentially set out for, which is territory, and to break the link between America and the EU and UK. And
in that sense, Putin has kind of won a bit here, because as Zelensky was saying yesterday, there is this blurring of who's the aggressor and who is the victim in all of this. I mean, Zelensky was very clearly treated not as a victim.
Well, not as an equal.
Not as an
I think that's the Zelensky really interesting in his press conference. He said, I walked in there thinking I should be treated as an equal, and I wasn't. And we've got an interview with somebody later in the programme from the Trump side of things who questions whether Ukraine is equal. It should be treated on an equal footing. And I think that is what it comes down to in the end.
Yeah.